Hey everybody, Samsara here. Welcome back to the channel. Today's video is going to be about tier dungeons. So here we go. Okay everybody, let's talk about tier dungeons. The first thing you need to know about the tier dungeons is that they are only unlocked after you can successfully complete Rift number 10. And unfortunately, just because you can unlock it does not mean that you can complete it. So I think most of the folks in Discord tend to complete their first tier dungeon when they're able to complete Rift number 18 or 19. Results will vary dependent on your character's skills and the way you have your stats distributed. Generally speaking, we have people who fail to complete tier dungeons a little earlier when they don't have enough boss damage or skill damage. If you dump all of your relics into Lightning Rune, that's great for your crit multiplier, but crit also multiplies your boss and your skill damage, so don't leave these out. Okay, so let's take a look at them. So first you need to go to your dungeons and pop over to the tier dungeon. You'll see the timer at this top indicates that the time until the end of the current season, which is basically each week. And each week you get 5 free entries into the tier dungeon, and you can spend 300 quartz to open up additional entries. So the loot drops from these scale. You'll get more tokens. If you see here, if I go back to stage 1, you get 10 tokens. At stage 8, I'm getting 18, or stage 9, I'm getting 19, 18, whatever. But the point is, what's not shown here is that each completion has a chance of dropping a fodder item that you can use to upgrade your Eternals from 1 star to up to, well, basically at stage 1 you're getting 1 stars, I think, and at stage 9 you're getting 5 stars. So for 300 quartz, the difference between a 1 star and a 5 star is significant. So earlier on, it is probably worth investing more of your quartz into maxing out your pirate ship or rift marks, or maybe even the squire / chaplain, which will give you refined stones. And then once you get to, say, stage 7, stage 8, stage 9, where you're dropping higher quality fodder, then spend some of your quartz to get those. So let's back it down to stage 1. We can see here that the boss attack is 100, defense 100, health is 100. So every few stages these will increase by a certain amount. And it seems like as you get a little higher, it falls off a little bit, but you'll see these little circles here fill in more and more as I progress and change colors, which are indicating the debuffs and special effects that are associated with each difficulty. So looking at difficulty number 1, you have a stressor that's reducing your skill cooldown, penetration, crit rate, and dodge by 10%. And by the time we get up to stage 9, where I'm running now, these are all being reduced by 90%. Well, not all of them. It looks like skill cooldowns only reduced by 30. The others are reduced by 90, so that's significant, which is one of the reasons why being able to go above your crit cap is important, because at that point, any amount that you have will help significantly. All right. So looking at the list of bosses, there are 5 of them. So every 5 weeks, this resets back to where it was. And each one of these bosses has their own special effects. So this week is the Flame Guide. It's a little counterintuitive. It turns out that Flame actually damages the Flame Guide more than helps him. So if we go through the list of debuffs at stage 9, we can see that attackers may be burned and will get extra damage when they're burned. I think this applies both to the character and to the boss. There's a charm effect, which means allies lose health every time that attacks hit. This is pretty much negligible once you have life leech, but can be pretty troublesome earlier on. Lightning shape means that the enemy is resistant to shock, which is very unfortunate if you have something like the Rastori's Prey that's helping you take down a boss, but they take extra damage from poison, so bear that in mind. And finally, the only weakness is reducing their damage by 80%, but burn damage increases damage by 10 times, or 1000%. So this is more or less the strategy each week, or not strategy, but this is the way that the buffs go, and the debuffs and special effects. So each week, bosses will have a strength and some weaknesses. Last week, I think your Mander Shard, if that's even how you say this, was weak to shock, and then this week the boss is not weak to shock, but they are weak to fire. So knowing the strengths and weaknesses makes it very important for choosing your skills, as well as what mounts you use. So let's take a look at that. Generally speaking, the Griffin airship is the mount that you want to use for higher DPS, but turns out this week if you use the burning spider mount, that the flame damage from this guy will help you significantly. It's actually helped me complete from stage 8 to stage 9, where I was failing to kill the boss in time before, due to this flaming initiation skill that pops off every 4.6 seconds for me. That's doing 10 times damage, so you know, that's pretty impressive and pretty helpful. The other thing to bear in mind is your companion loadout. If you have companions that are strong and have complementary skill effects like fire, like this one here, we have fire skills with the Fire Dragon Fist with the Wrathful Shugi. That it's going to help my damage a little bit. I think that Voltaire has some fire-based damage as well, but not all of my companions do. So results are going to vary, but obviously if you have more powerful companions that you can mix and match, stacking them up on the boss's weaknesses are going to help you the most. We'll look at extracts. What I tend to use when fighting tier dungeon are the life leech, and I just stack my crit chance to the max because I am debuffed so much that every little bit is going to help. And in terms of my equipment, I just use my PvP set with the exception of I don't use Fafnir's Pledge, only because that one has lower enhancement levels, so I need higher base health for my life leech to help. So the one-time undying effect is not quite as helpful. But I'm pretty much, stacked up using my best PvP gear because the tier dungeons use your PvP stats. And yeah, so that and my PvP gear is more geared towards doing more damage rather than farming, having higher gold drop and higher chest advanced chest drop rates. So we'll do one final check. We'll also look at our title. If you're in a guild, which everybody should be, you should be using your most powerful guild title because you'll have improvements to attack speed and attack. And once you get to Legendary Knight, you have a 5% reduction in skill cooldown. If you're able to get further, you have minor increases to these, but every little bit is going to help, especially with all those debuffs that are stacked up against you. Let's take a look at the tier dungeon itself. Drop rates on fodder are probably 33 to 50% chance. It depends. I haven't run a huge number of these, but I did run 4 of them earlier this morning and I got 2 drops, so that's pretty good. What I'll do is I'll just run through here pretty quickly and show you what it's all about. So I'm going to run stage 9, which I'm able to complete with some wiggle room. I think I've got everything set up. It's always best to double check. Aha, I did forget some things. I forgot my skills. So this week I need to do fire skills, so I'm going to use Flame Strike as my primary. I have this ability already equipped, so I'll use Heavy Blow because it's fire based, and I'll pop over here and I'm using Flame Strike. And for my debuff I will use the Majin Strike because it is fire based. I think that's the only fire based one that has significant power. You could try Dauntless, but I think this one does more damage. And I will also be using the Poison Aura to apply the poison effect and to give me an additional 20% attack power, which is very important because you need as much attack as possible to clear these dungeons before time runs out. So knowing that I have my titles, my mounts, my companions, and my skills in order, I will pop back over to the tier dungeon and I will make sure I'm doing the stage I want, which is stage 9. I will do 1 run for 300 quartz and we'll kick that off. Alright, so unfortunately my game crashed while it was loading and I'm not sure if it ate my quartz, so at any rate we're back and running the tier dungeon, and here are my stats. This again is based off of your PvP stats, my warrior level, and I've only got 38 million attack, 23 million defense, and 83 million health. My attack speed's not that great, but if you look here, I'm debuffed so bad. I only have 14% crit rate. My critical damage is pretty nuts because of my God of War set and my relics. And I even have a negative 19% penetration power. So that said, things are still looking pretty good because of all the extra damage we're getting from fire skills. So we're just going to let this run through. And as you can see, my health is dropping a little bit, and as we progress, I kind of cut it close. But so far, I've never lost against Stage 9 using this loadout. And so I did clear it with 1 minute 8 seconds left, which is not the greatest, but it's pretty good wiggle room. And I only got 2,000 refined stones. So what I'll do is I'll run this a few more times, and let's see what we get. Alright, so I ran the dungeon 3 more times, and I only got 1 drop. So, you know, 1 drop is better than none, so that was a 25% there. But that's why I said averaging it out, it's maybe 33% chance, maybe 25, it's hard to say. But at any rate, that's what we've got. So you'll see the disappearing equipment here is just fodder food. This is a 5-star. So I'm working on my equipment here. I'm actually working on this ring and trying to level it up for PvP and progressive purposes. So, you know, I got this 1 little bump there. So clearly I need to do this dungeon several more times to get more of these with more quartz to level this up to 4 stars, or run a lot of rifts to get, you know, infernal fodder. So at any rate, I'll just go ahead and dump that in there and keep working towards that later. So that should be everything you need to know about tier dungeons. If there is something that I've left out, feel free to leave a comment in the video or contact me over the Discord channel. Well, that's it for today's video. So as always, happy hunting.